this webinar on India's ongoing labor reforms and its implication for all the manufacturing sector, including ours. Well, you know that these reforms were long overdue. There has been a talk for quite some time of merging too many plethora of labor laws into defined 4 or 5 codes, so that the laws governing Indian labor and the workforce could be streamlined and could really help manufacturing grow by leaps and bounds. So as we delve into the consolidation of these 29 labor laws into our 4 codes, that is the theme of the session today, I believe the session will provide clarity and will address the practical concerns that many of our members attending this webinar may be having. We all know that it's a very landmark development, as a matter of fact, because and its importance cannot be overemphasized. As you know, the India's labor landscape is undergoing a major shift. The purpose of these 4 codes are essentially to simplify compliance, improve worker safety, improve social compliance angle, improve worker protection, and remove the irritants in the law. And it has more implications for labor-intensive sectors like textile and apparel, and more so for apparel industry. The apparel industry has been a driving force in generating employment, and more importantly, the almost 80% approximately the workforce comprises women, rural women, and of course quite a chunk of them are even migrant workers, may not be women, of course, but then so these codes, we believe, that will try live forward towards formalizing the employment, because in India the employment to a great extent is in the informal sector. So the industry, of course, welcomes the simplified procedures such as single license, single registration, single return, and all of that. And it's a paradigm shift, I think, a definitive shift towards a facilitator model rather than the inspector-driven system. So that also reduces the fear of harassment and promotes basically trust-based compliance. The major, to me, if you ask me, the most major reform which will have far-reaching implication basically for the sector is the removal of Section 66 in the Indian Factories Act. Like I mentioned, that a significant majority of the workforce comprises women, and the apparel industry has all these years been struggling with the issue of capacity augmentation. So there was the idea mooted that why can't we have double shifts, or in most of the engineering industry you find triples, 3 shifts. So the idea was that why, before the government driven initiatives like PLI and PM Mitra end up in augmenting capacity, why not introduce double shifts so that the existing capacity could be immediately doubled, and that will resolve a lot of problems. But the major impediment in that was the Section 66 of the Indian Factories Act, which prohibited employment of women workers in night at factories. And though this particular provision was held unconstitutional by the Madras High Court long back, it continued to exist in the Factories Act, and it remained a major stumbling block. Some of the states had, of course, brought their own legislation to overcome this difficulty, but then it remained, pan-India, there was no change. So this particular removal, the provision of employing women workers at night, with of course adequate safety and security measures, is a major move. Change that will of course help address the issue of capacity augmentation in this sector to a large extent. We also believe that the changes that have been brought by in this particular labor laws will improve productivity because it ensures social compliance. It gives assurance of assurance of some kind of assurance in employment, and of course, because with the improved social compliance, because there is a renewed focus on ESG compliance, which includes social compliance. So that will basically help Indian industry have better market access in developed world, including in European Union and UK and US. All these countries account for a major chunk of our exports. So this increased social compliance will provide us enhanced market access. And at the end of the day, I think it will do a world of good to this industry. Of course, there are concerns that all this increased social compliance may ultimately lead to increased costs and all of that. But I think that particular will be far more outweighed by the benefit that we'll end up getting. Industry feedback, of course, highlights that that it will result in greater operational flexibility. There's a clarity, clearer rules for contract and migrant laborers, for fixed tenure laborers, workforce. This will enable improved safety standards, better social compliance, compulsory health check, and all of that. So with greater safety net, with improved social compliance, the workforce will feel all the much more motivated than they were ever before, which will definitely enhance their productivity and efficiency. So I think today's discussion will focus on all of those aspects and help the participants prepare for a smoother transition. We in AEPC view these reforms as a long-term enabler of competitiveness, as a long-term enabler of export competitiveness, responsible production, and alignment with global expectations, strengthening India's position as a reliable, one of the most reliable sourcing hubs. So thank you all, and I wish you all the very best.